Give a speech. Give a speech where you say, I want to be prime minister for 4 more years because I have a burning desire to get these 3 things done, and I'm the only guy who will do them.
This is the week Justin Trudeau will not only have to look his own caucus members, as well as Canadians, the Conservatives, and India right in the eye. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David, and today's top stories, we've got a panel here from CTV where they discuss Justin Trudeau's situation with his caucus. He's having a meeting with them on Wednesday. Pierre Poilievre is going to absolutely destroy him today and tomorrow and all the way the rest. Any other day he shows up at question period this week, he's got to deal with the SDTC scandal. So his caucus meeting is not going to be a walk in the park. We've also got the corrupt CBC trying to help out David Eby and trying to smear the Conservatives, as well as a clip that will absolutely floor you of Palestinian protesters getting involved with our youth in high school. So let's jump into this. So what you're about to see here is some real woke CBC action on full display, as posted here by Concerned Canadian. If you ever doubted that we shouldn't defund the CBC, then just listen to the overt bias hyperbole of these reporters, aka propagandists. Defund the CBC.
How politically divided you think BC is?
Well, it's interesting to see the BC NDP doing not as well as expected in Surrey and Richmond in particular. And that's basically where they're losing this election. I know it's still tight, but in terms of where they underperform, you can look at those 2 regions specifically. If you had given the BC NDP the opportunity to form the perfect political opponent in a laboratory 6 months ago, they would have given you a party very similar to the BC Conservatives. They would have given you a leader that perhaps is not that charismatic, perhaps has some climate change denialism, some vaccine skepticism, has pandered to conspiracy theorists. Maybe their front line would be not that well-known BC Liberal MLAs, and then the rest of the party would be rounded out by basically internet trolls. On top of that, the BC Conservatives did not have a get-out-the-vote strategy. They didn't really have voter ID systems. I mean, this was a party that really did not have the same amount of resources as the BC NDP.
This is egregious. Our tax dollars going into these propaganda kings. Absolute filth from the CBC. CBC condensed cream of bullcrap soup. I hate the CBC. Let me count the ways propaganda is their skill set. CBC sounds like the BBC's long-lost cousin. Both love sipping taxpayer tea while doing propaganda pirouettes. Let's find the defund button before the hyperbole officially turns history into fiction. So next up, we got this clip of Captain Schmuck. I'm guessing this is an old clip, but basically it's, you can see here, groping accuser may have had different experience. So this is going back, it says, at an event 18 years ago where a woman accused Trudeau of getting handsy. What do we say here? The guy quit his job as a teacher in the middle of the year. A little bit suspicious. Why would a teacher quit in the middle of the year? There's some situation going on. I don't know what's going on. I'm not saying anything. I just don't know what's going on. You know, that situation, this situation, they're probably not related to each other. Trudeau's got some funny situations in his past here. But here's him speaking on it.
Obviously, this is a situation that has been very much on my mind over the past few weeks. It's a issue that I have been deeply engaged with, not just as a leader, but all my life since my early 20s in university, active on issues around sexual assault and behaviors. I've been reflecting very carefully on what I remember from that incident almost 20 years ago. And again, I am confident that I did not act inappropriately. But part of this awakening that we're having as a society, a long-awaited realization, is that it's not just one side of the story that matters, that the same interactions could be experienced very differently from one person to the next. And I am not going to speak for the woman in question. I would never presume to speak for her. But I know that there is an awful lot of reflection to be had as we move forward as a society on how people perceive different interactions. Like I said, I do not feel that I acted inappropriately in any way, but I respect the fact that someone else might have experienced that differently. And this is part of the reflections that we have to go through.
Yuck. I don't think we need analysis on this guy's body language. I think we can all we all come into the same conclusion here. What we've got here is a pretty startling video coming from Elizabeth May. This is the leader of the Green Party. Just listen to this. As it says here, I take my marching orders from the permanent representatives of Palestine to Canada.
We take our marching orders, I do anyway, I shouldn't speak for everyone. I take my marching orders from the permanent representative of Palestine to Canada. We take our
So does this really, I guess, surprise anyone, considering she got up in the middle of the House of Commons and started pointing directly at Netanyahu, and she called him out and said he's the problem, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, to say she takes her marching orders from Palestine, whew, that's a pretty bold thing to do, considering the state of Canada and how so many of those people are part of Samidoun, which was just designated as an organization that's not friendly. Why do all the lefties support the T-word people? I just don't get it. That's insane. She's always been nuts, but this is next level treason. Is she drunk again? Was this before or after one of her 6 martini lunches? Next up, we've got this. This is not what we want to see in Canada. We've got police blocking an intersection because these kids are walking with these Palestinian protesters. They're walking out of school. This was a staged walkout from a high school. Kids being indoctrinated is what this is. This is disgraceful. These kids don't know what's going on. These people are taking advantage of them. They're taking advantage of our youth. This country is going to hell in a handbasket. Police ride horses over elders protecting fascists, shut down by coffee for T-word people, and close streets for children in training. Canadian kids shouldn't be marching under foreign flags. Yeah, exactly. They're using school children. What the hell is happening to our country? Next up, we got a panel here from CTV where they discuss Trudeau's next week here and how hard that's going to be for his caucus meeting.
If you look at all that we just laid out, what do you think the impact on the Prime Minister's leadership is or will be? Well, nothing good, that's for sure. Talk about having a bad week. Whether it'll make a difference or not, I guess time will tell. We'll see. But having a mini caucus revolt is not something any leader is stronger for having gone through. And losing former cabinet ministers, it's well, I don't think they're joining a revolt against him. I think they're doing what a lot more people are probably going to do, which is just quietly look for the exit and get out of there before the whole thing falls down. So. Look, all the polling says the prime minister should leave. What's in the best interest of his party certainly indicates that he should leave. Increasingly, people who are worried about losing their seat are going to be saying he should leave. Whether he will leave or not is, I guess, the question. And so far, the answer's been no. All the MPs I spoke to on that day conveyed to me there will be many more MPs who make a similar decision. That seemed to be something like multiple people were reacting to the news with. What does that tell you?
Well, look, the old Bob Dylan song, it's not dark yet, but it's getting there. And that increasingly describes the situation around the prime minister. We don't know exactly what's going to happen next week. We don't know if in the middle of this whole international crisis with India and everything else that's going on that you're going to see 30 people stand up and demand that he quit in his own caucus. But those people are there. That is undeniable. And so, the challenge for the prime minister is that since June 24th, which he's joking about, there's been nothing. And that vacuum has been filled with frustration on the part of the backbench, where they're saying, well, are we to just, go gently into that good night? Maybe not. Maybe we need to push back. And I think it's really less of a revolt than more of a reaction to the non-response from the prime minister and those around him about how they're going to make an adjustment, what they're going to do. Is there a plan to become more competitive? And so I really do think that more and more people are going to say, all right, forget it then. I'm not going to run again. Some will gather and step forward and say he shouldn't run again. But all of it has the great, absolutely distinct odor of fin de regime around it.
It's quite something coming from Scott Reid. This guy's very much a liberal. He's right, though. I think Trudeau is going to prorogue because he already showed his cards with that before. Deep down to the core, he's a narcissist. He's in control. He's not giving up the helm of the ship. So I don't think he's going to step down. I don't think he's going to do what's right for the country, what's right for the Liberal Party. He only does what's right for himself. I think this is quite clear, and I don't think we're going to see anything different from Justin Trudeau.
Kathleen, I think the Prime Minister this week, seemed to tacitly try and send a message or acknowledge what Scott just mentioned, and then send a message that there is fight in the way that he sort of navigated the foreign interference inquiry and leveled some pretty serious accusations at the Conservative Party. But ultimately, right away, the next day, the story was 4 cabinet ministers are leaving, despite the reasons that they're putting forward. Do you think the conversation around the Prime Minister is ultimately changing, because they have remained very steadfast until now in their insistence he will be leading the party into the next election?
So what we're hearing from inside, Liberal circles and around Parliament Hill is that they are planning to fight. But you kind of have to wonder, they didn't fight after Toronto St. Paul's. They didn't really put out the fight after Nanaimo caucus this past summer, and not again after losing LaSalle Verdun. So what has changed? Certainly there's more blood in the water after the announcement of these 4 cabinet ministers that are not going to reoffer again. And the sharks are circling. So what's going to happen next Wednesday? And I think the questions you have to ask yourself is, when this, rumor revolt comes to, the fore, how many people are there? Is it 20? Is it 30? If it's 50, it's almost game over. But how large will it be? And the second question is, who are they? Are they people of import? Do Canadians know them? I would argue that Canadians didn't really know those 4 cabinet ministers that just announced they're not going to resign. And also, what will these caucus members, these backbenchers that are going to call for Justin Trudeau to resign, actually do? Will they sit as independents? Will they possibly vote against the government? Will they vote with the Conservatives, maybe on a non-confidence motion? That would be more damning. But we have to obviously see a plan. And if they don't come to caucus with a plan this Wednesday, and instead just kind of once again put their fingers in their ears and cover their eyes and ignore the reality on the ground, they're in a lot of trouble. Not just the poll trouble, but they're in trouble facing possible even greater revolt.
I think
this is interesting. So for the first time ever, Kathleen Monk here, normally she says stuff that's really stupid. I got to give it to her. She might be right. The Liberals who push back, if they're not seeing a response from Justin Trudeau, maybe they vote with the Conservatives. I could see that potentially happening. If they really don't like what's going on with Trudeau, imagine 20 votes heading over to the Conservative side. That would be quite something. That is something they could do. I mean, they could send a message that way. They really don't have any other power, but this could get very interesting next week.
I think Kathleen's point is really well taken, Corey, that it will really, lots will depend on what happens this week in the size and the scope and the message that is ultimately delivered. But her other point is well taken, too. They've had a few days now to come up with a response to something they know is brewing, right? Even at a minimum among a handful of MPs, but maybe many more. Do you think the stakes are high for the way in which they navigate that?
Very high. And look, whether they do some of the more harsh things that Kathleen suggested or not, it's still not good news. It's, I guess there are levels of degree. If you could look back to the Stockwell Day era and having people sitting as independents outside your caucus, that's the most extreme version. I don't think it'll come to that. But look, said on our podcast last week that they may not be in a full-on affair right now, but they're signing up on Ashley Madison. It doesn't bode well for the marriage. I think the other element of this is look, who's out defending him in caucus? The silence is almost as damning as the names on a list, right? There's no enthusiasm for him, even amongst those people who are still tacitly backing his leadership.
Yeah, there was a few MPs this week, Scott, who sent an email saying, hey, guys, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, this isn't making us look good. But even that didn't, it's not like, this has been now reported for well over a week. It's not like many people are jumping out to get in front of a camera and say, this is a shame, it shouldn't happen, or I'm not associated with this whatsoever. None of that has happened.
No, and maybe we'll see some of those cards get played this week if the PMO decides it wants to mount some sort of proactive defense in anticipation of Wednesday's National Caucus. But look, this thing operates at 2 levels. I think it's really important to remember that. Sure, there's the Sturm and Drang of, what's going to happen on Wednesday, and will there be 20 or 30, and will they be important people, and all of that. And that can either be more dramatic or less dramatic. But the fundamental problem remains. You're 20 points behind in the polls. You're barely hanging in there with the NDP. You've signaled zero change since losing the St. Paul's by-election on June 24th. That's going on 6 months now. The Prime Minister says he's going to hang on to his job, but he doesn't say why and what is so indispensable about him being here, what people get when they vote for him for the next term, for the future, not asking for credit for what you've done. And so that is the second level at which nothing is happening. That's the fundamental issue. And it doesn't matter to a certain degree how loud MPs are or are not. If the Prime Minister and his team don't fix that, then they cannot win the next election. And it's over. So it can be over in a whole variety of ways. But right now, they are doing nothing to make it better. And that's what's so damned puzzling.
Last word.
It's pretty interesting because, like John Rustad, after the election here in BC, and it's not really decisive who won, he gave a speech about hope and where he wants to take British Columbia. David Eby was just kind of like looking poopy pants, and then said he's already talking to Sonia Furstenau, the Green leader, about working together with her because that's how the only way he can get a position of majority power. It just goes to show the difference of the leaders there. You know, David Eby in the BC NDP, he's always just been cutting down John Rustad. Their whole campaign was just cutting down members of the Conservative Party, not lifting up Canada, lifting up British Columbia. And this is essentially the same thing what Scott Reed's saying here. Justin Trudeau has no vision for hope, and we don't trust the guy. He's a liar. And all that's happened in the last 6 months, just think of the scandals that have come out, one after the other after the other. There's no reason to trust these guys because all they've proven to us is that they steal our money any which way they can. They're not here for us. They're here to mug us blind, and that's it. Why would we have any support for them? Now, there's still bonehead liberals out there who somehow think Justin Trudeau's the greatest thing since sliced bread. They refuse to pull their head out of the sand and actually look around and see what's going on in Canada. But for the majority of us, Trudeau's gone.
To you, Kathleen.
Yeah, I guess if we want to put our strategy hats on and say, how could they turn this around? I mean, they do still have 7 weeks before the House rises for Christmas. So what can they do in that time? Like what can they, roll out? They've got a couple confidence votes they're going to have to face, both from the Conservatives and the Democrats. How do they manage those? Could they dangle some money to the provinces? We just saw the deal happen with Manitoba in terms of the school lunches. Could that happen across the country? We're facing a number of elections across the country. Obviously, BC and New Brunswick, but there could also be Saskatchewan, but there is Saskatchewan, but there could also be Nova Scotia being called really soon. So that could change some of the dynamic too. And we are seeing, the polls are bad. Corey said it. We've all read it. We know the polls are bad, but we're also seeing upticks in Poilievre's negatives. That's a fact. It's not overwhelming, but his negatives are going up, and people are tuning in more to the politics of this game. So,
she's pushing one poll. They can skew these polls if they want to. That's ridiculous. Poilievre is absolutely dominating in Canada. Don't listen to this NDP nonsense. She's trying to do Jagmeet a favor here by saying that stuff.
In the case of imagining what is the art of the possible, they could do something, but they've got to bring a plan. They've got to bring a plan. They've got to execute on something, and they've got to show their team that they're going to move forward.
Okay.
They can do things. He could do something. I know it's old-timey. Give a speech. Give a speech where you say, I want to be Prime Minister for 4 more years because I have a burning desire to get these 3 things done, and I'm the only guy who will do them. Make it about the future. What's the purpose of being in power longer? That hasn't been articulated. And until it is, you're not going to convince Liberals, independents, your opponents, nobody, voters, nothing.
When have we heard a speech from Justin Trudeau, even a fake passionate speech like, I feel it in my bones, that whole, the thing about his love for Canada and all that kind of crap? He hasn't even attempted to do one of those fake speeches in a while. So, while I don't agree a lot with Scott Reed, he is right. Trudeau has no passion. And as I said, all he's proven is that him and his den of thieves are just taking our money and flushing it into their own personal, their own business bank accounts.
Well, on that optimistic note, we are going to conclude today's discussion. Thanks, guys. Scott Reed.
He's so arrogant and narcissistic, he won't leave. Yeah, Trudeau's not going anywhere. Not until he's forced out. Hands down, worst PM of all time. As a Conservative, I hope he stays so we have the biggest landslide victory in Canadian history. As a Canadian, I want my portion of the $400 million that is gone. The whole animal kingdom is circling. Yeah, not just the sharks. We got this one posted by Naya. It says, the Liberal Party told BC/Canadians they had no more money to help fix the Fraser Dikes after the 2021 flooding. But Ahmed Hussein was eager to help the Taliban in Afghanistan after they had major flooding. Taxpayer wallet was at the ready. On his knees, just like UNRWA. So we've got this here, Ahmed Hussein. This is Trudeau's minister. This is more just liberal corruption as usual. We've got tons of money and resources here. Unfortunately, they're wasted and given away. That is, yeah, exactly what we're dealing with. Next up, we got this one posted by Shazzy Goli. Toronto's condo market craters, with new sales plummeting 81%, the worst collapse since 1995. Only 567 new condo sales in Q3 of 2024, lowest since 1995, an 87% decline from the 10-year average. Market is in crisis mode. 63% drop in sales year to date, slowest since 1996. There's a whole bunch of stuff that went into this. You had the Bank of Canada interest rates. You've got Justin Trudeau promising those rates wouldn't change, and they did quite the opposite. They started going to the moon. You had buying house FOMO. You had way too many people being brought into the country. We've got foreign entities like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street buying up houses and renting them back to Canadians at record levels. It should be outright banned in Canada for a corporation to own a house and rent it back to a Canadian. No smart buyer wants these overpriced dog crates. Yeah, that's what they are. They're super overpriced. Jumping over to my group, let's check out some memes. First up, we got this one. End property tax at 65. Let seniors stay in their homes. This is what it should be. Why do you pay tax on your property after it's paid off? It's ridiculous. I get it. We have to pay for streets and stuff, but at a certain point, big corporations that are making piles of money, maybe they should be paying more, and people should be able to live in their houses after they're paid off without property tax. You know, 65, I think this is a good idea. I'm NDPing myself. Alberta Premier Daniel Smith bans pronouns in schools this fall, and boys will not be able to compete with girls in sports. I sure hope this is true. Welcome to Canada. Don't try to change it. If you don't like it, turn around. Thanks to half of you. If it wasn't for you idiots, I wouldn't have a job. Yeah, no kidding. I can't believe half the people voted for this buffoon. Just go walk around anywhere. You'll see zombies all over the place because of him. Why do these NDP supporters want to live in a world where zonked out zombies are roaming our streets rampantly? Why do people want that? I don't understand. We constantly bombard Canadians with news about Donald Trump to distract them from what a complete a-hole Justin Trudeau is. Got this one here. Bonnie Henry, remember her? Bought a winery in South Okanagan where she markets her own special barbecue sauce. What a carpetbagger. Oh, and she made a film about herself too, would you believe? Narcissist, you say? So I just looked this up. Apparently, yeah, this is true. She owns her own winery. Burnaby right now. Yeah, a lot of flooding going on. This is what happens when you get a lot of rain and bad drainage design. Science says whatever money wants it to say. So next up we have what looks like somebody driving backwards in the other lane. Ah, there's a moose. Look at this thing. This guy's getting a photo. This is unreal. There's no audio on this, but this is amazing. That is truly a moose on the loose. That thing's huge. Look at that rack. That's a nice rack. Wow. That's hilarious. Somebody backed up to get a shot of that. This one's funny. If you're ever in Ontario, make sure you visit Bradford. This is savage. There we have it. Justin Trudeau is going to probably have one of the hardest weeks of his career here. He's going to have to answer to his own caucus and try to convince them that he should still be the leader. He's going to have to answer to the Canadian people on what the heck he just did with India. And he's going to have to answer to Pierre Poilievre, as Pierre's going to absolutely school him in question period.